Alexa, stop.
Why should Alexa stop?
Because I was listening to the George Michael album. So,
Oh,
yeah. So I had to tell Alexa that,
yeah.
I'm done.
Let
Right.
let me hit a couple of buttons here. Give me a second. Da, da, da,
What's good,
da.
man? What's been happening?
Good. I'm good. Just a long day. It seems. Feels like just a long day.
Holiday, man. Holiday. Well, it's
Exactly.
holiday after all.
It feels good, and but it's a long day. I think I should be in the pool, but
You think?
I think that's obnoxious.
I think since it's Memorial Day, I like to leave that to the veterans and the people who really gave their lives. I don't think I should be relaxing and doing shit. You know what I'm saying? Let them have their day.
Man, damn.
Should you really be in the pool? Do you deserve that?
It is the
Kill me.
it is the beginning of the summer.
You're right. It is the beginning
It
of
is
the
the
summer.
beginning of the summer.
And that's
You
how we
know
mark it. You're right. You're right.
exactly. Beginning of the summer. Um, what are you drinking today?
Something new that I saw in the store, a Corona Refresca. A Corona
Hold on,
Refresca.
hold on. Hey Prince, what are you drinking?
Today, I'm trying a Corona Refresca. One of my
Okay,
favorite.
so Corona, do me a favor. Can you drink it with the yeah,
With
flip
the
it to
label
yeah
saying,
yeah. Just try to drink. There you go. Ah, this podcast is brought to you by Corona and Squarespace because we would never use Squarespace, but they seem the only ones to give a fuck about podcasts.
right.
Right. So, Prince, this is when you say, we do our website on Squarespace.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not paying attention to the script. Yes, we do our site on Squarespace. We love Squarespace.
Squarespace, for those that don't know HTML5. There you go. All right, that's the interest.
Yes,
That's
we'll
the
be
beginning.
editing that out. Okay, but go ahead.
So, Prince.
Yes.
So I was doing a little research on the artist that we're going to talk about today, and I thought the coolest shit was that there's this designation called Diamond Extreme, right? So you've got gold, platinum, diamond, then you have Diamond Extreme, and Diamond Extreme. Diamond Extreme is is meant for people who do you know tens of millions of albums. So, for example, as of 2018, the number one selling group um, or artist in the world are the Eagles.
Really?
Their greatest hits
Yeah.
is
That's a classic.
38 times platinum, and then second up at 30, I think it was 33 times platinum is Michael
Really?
Jackson's Thriller, and then somewhere when you start to get into like the 22 times platinum, you have the Eagles Hotel California. So if you just talk about insufferably wealthy,
Right.
it's
Right.
about the Eagles. By the way, guess who's number 5 on that list?
I don't know. Who would that be?
It would be Billy Joel for his greatest
Ah!
hits 1 and 2. So Billy Joel for his greatest hits 1 and 2. Billy Joel for his greatest hits
Ah.
1 and 2 is something around like 20 million copies sold. And I think that's really important. And if you get back down into like maybe the 50s, there's a whole bunch of artists that have sold only 10, 11 million albums,
Mm-hmm.
as of 2018. And who would that be?
Would that be George Michael?
That
Would
would
George
be
Michael be on that
George
list?
Michael. That would be George Michael. So I'm gonna put on my
Bino
late.
glasses
Right,
for
right.
George
No.
Michael?
These are the late George Michael glasses.
Oh,
Right,
okay. All right.
right. The
All right.
difference
That's kind
between
of all right. That's
the
kind of
difference
90s
between
George Michael
yeah,
though.
yeah. No, right, right. These are the glasses that George Michael wore after in his career after he came out and was caught with that mess in L.A. and running after kids and
See,
everything
I'm
else like
wearing
that.
Dayglow George Michael, bright orange, Wham, Wham George Michael.
So there's a couple of things that we will not do on this podcast. We will not talk bad about Wham. Um,
I agree.
right. We could spend this entire this entire podcast this week talking about, I don't know, great songs like "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," right?
Yeah.
Great song. And by the way, do you know that that song was written about the unemployment crisis in the UK at the time? So the whole joke was, yeah, wake me up before you go, you know? And of course, we just thought it was a very interesting, ode to hedonism and everything else like that. Besides, listening to "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go" was incredible to do in the project, since everybody thought I was gay anyway. Um, and then you wear the Frankie Says
Choose life. Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah, choose life, that whole thing, and that whole I love that. I
It was
love
so
that.
fun. Yeah.
I love that. That album, "Make It Big," was incredible for Wham, and it was incredible because it was this one song, way before even their first album, which was called Fantastic. Way before then, when they were putting it together, George Michael had this idea, and he had been writing some stuff with Wham that was just really contrived and really poppy, and he wrote "Careless Whisper." And the interesting part about it is that he wrote "Careless Whisper" and he recorded it a few number of times to just kind of get it right. Two things that are interesting about "Careless Whisper." The first thing is that it was a part of "Make It Big," but it was Wham featuring George Michael. Because the song was written pretty much before Wham, that's why it's a George Michael song. Interestingly enough, of all of those tracks that George Michael and Wham had, of all those tracks, "Careless Whisper," right, is a song that's actually written by George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
Okay.
think about that for a moment, right? It's a song that is George Michael featuring Wham featuring George Michael, but it was actually George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, whereas everything that he was writing on his album. So I say that to say this: George Michael never wanted to be a part of a group. It was a way of hiding his identity. I would think that and you and I have talked about this. The worst thing about making it big and being incredibly fucking successful is you do it alone, right? So
Right.
much like you and I have been in our career. You have somebody that has a whole bunch of talent, and you have somebody that just follows along.
True. But I don't. But I don't mind carrying you, dude. I can live with that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Gosh, I can't wait till I get to do my own fucking podcast.
Yeah. Good luck with that. But
Anyway, so the interesting part about that is someone somewhere somehow, George Michael just never thought that he can get away from the Wham image. So he released "I'm Your Man" in 1986, right? And that was from the Edge of Heaven, that last album, right? And that's with the leather gloves, man. The
right.
boom was
Yeah.
just smack. And that was 1986. So he basically got off the tour, and that was it for Wham. And he released some filler stuff with Aretha Franklin, "Know You Were Waiting," and then he goes back into the studio. And when he goes back in the studio, he does something that's really, really interesting that he had never done. He had everything written kind of in his head. He refused to, he didn't really want to work with, a traditional band, bass guitar, and everything else like that. What he ended up getting was a Lindrum, right? And all of you hip hop heads, you think about MPCs, you think about Wu Tang, right? You think about that little box here, right? This box here represents. There you go. I live in Connecticut, so if y'all are coming to get me, I'll be in Connecticut. Because, Prince, you know how niggas are, right? You know how niggas are. Because I just have this because I don't do any programming, but I think I'm going to use it on an album cover.
Right. Get yourself some street cred. I got you.
Little Kanye slide there.
Yeah.
Little Kanye slide. Anyway, right? These pads are incredible. And the reason why they're incredible is because they're Lin pads. And they not only sound incredible, they just have a very unique feel. And so George Michael, an engineer, a whole bunch of synths, and a Lindrum walk into a studio, and out comes Faith. And all of a sudden, we have this thing that George Michael, who had been earlier in his career just complaining so much. He had been complaining so much about not getting his due because of Michael Jackson and losing all of these awards to Michael Jackson. George Michael turns around and tells the world, you know what? I'm going to give you something that's bigger than Michael Jackson. And he sets out to write the most accomplished pop album, I believe, that many of us have ever seen. And it is durable. Of all the albums that we've talked about, we've talked about Bobby Brown, we've talked about Keith Sweat, we've talked about Billy Joel. We've talked about, those three guys, sick without a pause.
All right, let me just say a few things since we're going to talk about this album. I mean, this album is good. I mean, it's a very good album, but I think that George Michael as an artist, I think this was it. You know what I'm saying? There's some artists, they only really have like one song, one album in them, just one thing of greatness in them, like Lauryn Hill, for example, one good album.
She never showed up to that second studio session.
Right.
That's the right. And when you fuck the producer, you fuck Wyclef.
When we do next season, when we do the '90s, we can talk about that album and all the stuff associated with that.
Let's just pause for a second.
Sure. Go ahead.
She was fucking Wyclef so hard that she was singing, "Girls, you better watch out." Damn. That's some bomb ass. That's just Then she had forget it. Listen. Any dick that's going to make you late for the next 30 years.
But, she was able to live her life off that, off that dick, as you say.
Man, that's just, okay. So let's leave Lauryn Hill alone because we probably should come to that album, which at some point we will.
Yeah.
But we were just, I think you're right. When you talk about just this apex, this is apex that George Michael's in.
Right. This was his whole life, basically. I mean, of course, he was very young, but his whole life was all about doing this one album. This was it, and it was a great album. After that, he didn't even want the next album. He ended up getting sued by Sony because he refused to tour. He refused to do videos.
I see. This is just like the reverse discrimination that we get in the music business, right? Prince want to change his name, and y'all are all solidarity. Y'all don't even want to call him Prince. The dude got a symbol on his face, and you're just like, ooh, the artist formerly known as. Y'all don't even say Prince, right? But George Michael is in court for the same thing, slave contracts. Slave contracts. He's in court for the same thing, and y'all don't give him props.
Of course, we don't give him props because George Michael that year got R&B album of the year, got R&B. He won all these R&B awards. Oh, he would never win that today. Let's be honest. We don't do that.
Well,
back then you can get away with that. Come on,
okay,
really?
All right. Macklemore and Post Malone, but okay, all right. I'm gonna leave that because there's nothing more white than tattooing shit all over your face because you never have to get a job.
Yeah, George Michael was very R&B with his
George Michael. Okay, so Faith was a pop album, right? So let's talk about Faith, right? And you can't talk about Faith without talking about that. Is there a better organ intro besides Let's Go Crazy, right? Is there a better organ intro on any album that you have ever heard? Organ, and the organ builds up, and then you hear the pick of the guitar, the doom, 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 doom.
Do you know where that organ sound came from?
Where did that organ sound come from?
That organ sound was from the Wham album, the first Wham album, the song they did, Freedom. He just used that same organ sound, which kind of just shows he was already kind of running out of ideas before his first thing even started. But
I think what you got to remember is that George Michael wanted to be artistic. He wanted to be accepted in the arts. He had something to say. Guy was really a tragic figure, like mama's boy,
right.
One eyebrow, a little pudgy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you get a publicist. They keep the carbs off you. They put you on the keto diet.
Andrew really carried the group in the beginning. That's true.
Yeah.
Andrew was the one who was out there, who was, the excited person. And what about the two girls in Wham that nobody ever talks about? But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, when he was dead, they were on stage.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But
wow, hold on. Can we get a shout out to the two girls in Wham that nobody ever talked about?
Right, the black chick and the white chick. One was Andrew's girlfriend. And they kind of faded away.
One was Andrew's girlfriend. One was Andrew's girlfriend. The other one used to sing in the church where her father was a preacher. Which one was Andrew's girlfriend? The white one or the black one?
Right.
So
I get that. That's funny.
So you come into this E chord, and I think it's an E chord, and it's one of those things where when you're playing a song like that, right, you got to play it exact, or you just use Akai samplers and you play it once and then you get it right, because that's exactly what he ended up doing. What's interesting about Faith is not just the fact that it's kind of like that Bo Diddley kind of. It wasn't just that. It was George Michael has an interesting way of recording. When George Michael makes a record, what he does is he's in the studio and he's got like some ideas laid down, and then he sits in front of a mic and he has to have his headphones perfect so that exactly the way that his mic sounds, all the effects, all the reverb, and you and I know you add all that stuff after you record. Right. He needed to hear it exactly like it was going to be on the album, which is insane, right? Because you're starting to mix ideas, and that's just never a good way to do it. So Faith was recorded as if George Michael was listening back to the final product. And so as a result, and it was all recorded digitally, he was actually going in and punching all the grunts and let me say differently and everything else like that. And it was really interesting where if you listen to it, and I want everybody to go back and listen to Faith, when you listen to Faith, I want you to think about he pretty much punched and chopped every single syllable on that song, which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And when you wonder why the song has the power that it does, It's because every single syllable was contrived. And that was George Michael, right? So he writes the song about, he writes a pop song, and it's supposed to be open, and it's supposed to be, endearing, and it's supposed to make America great again. And then, it was all of these things. And it was supposed to be him as free as an artist, yet using studio tricks and gimmicks. What does he do? He punches in every syllable in order to make you feel some kind of way.
Well, that's another interesting thing about that album, because I mean that album, of course, it was number one for I don't know weeks here in the States, but it was nowhere near. It was more popular here in the States than it was in the UK. Much
Absolutely.
popular.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
really it's an American album. It's not a UK album. It's
So
an
by the
American.
way, that's a good point. Can we just kind of go to the left for a moment, and let's take a second and let's remind our viewers that all of the great English bands of the 80s, because Americans were so fucking stupid, they had to put UK behind it. Right? Like the beat,
now that I think about it.
UK. Wham,
Right.
UK.
Okay.
Right. That's
Yeah.
that's what they used to do, and that's how we took it. That's how we took it, because we were Americans and we were stupid. So I remember saying to someone in school, "Oh, I love that new Beat UK album," and they just looked at me like,
Why are you listening to UK shit?
"Right. First of all, you need to get back on that King of Rock by Run DMC shit, and go back to the Projects with your My Adidas ass, and leave the Cure and the Beat, right? And Morrissey, right? Leave Morrissey, leave them guys to us, Leave Roxy Music to Roxy fucking music. Roxy Music is in the Hall of Fame. Do you know that?
Yes, I do know.
Can
that.
you name
Right.
one fucking song by Roxy Music? Yes, I think so.
Avalon, by the way, is a
Oh.
Roxy Music song, and it's a great song.
I would argue that Avalon is by Brian Ferry and not Roxy Music.
I think Roxy Music gets the credit though.
Fair enough. So let's not go down the
Okay, yeah,
the
let's
fuck
not go down
rock.
that road.
Okay, anyway, so now
George Michael.
you've got this heavily contrived album, which is that song, which is really good, and then he comes back with and remember. So this album was released in October, right? In June, earlier that year, the single "I Want Your Sex" is released. Right? And while we'll talk about "I Want Your Sex" after we talk about this next song, "I Want Your Sex" opened it up because it was like Duran Duran and Girls on Film, a video that MTV would not play. Like a Prayer is a video that they wouldn't play, that just, and there's nothing. So Prince, this is what we got to do. I'm working on my new album, and I got a couple of songs. We have to make a video that YouTube will not let us show. Right?
Good luck with that.
Right. Red patches,
but it's amazing how
red
people
patches,
play those songs.
little mustaches, little signs. No, they'll just because they'll put Trump 2020 in that'll.
You'll be
Oops,
fine.
I just lost half of our listeners, right? With the Trump 2020. Okay. Anyway, so coming off of all of that risque was this album, right? And then you come with Faith, another big single off of here. So the second single becomes Father Figure.
Right.
And Father Figure is deliciously creepy enough that when you look back in time, there's a reason why you don't hear it on the radio. And that's because the number one trend on Pornhub right now is incest sex, right? Actually, it's...
I would know. I would not know.
I keep list. By the way, this segment is brought to you by Pornhub, where for the next week, it's on us. Pornhub Unlimited, right? Go to Pornhub/adult education, right? And sign up for 1 free week of Pornhub Platinum.
Oh,
Okay,
where is my
so
girl?
you got this song that goes back into Father Figure, right? And again, we didn't know George Michael was gay. Again, going back into it,
Right. That's
is it
another. Yeah, that's
yeah,
the thing about that
yeah,
time.
yeah,
You know, the way we look at George Michael now was completely different than the way we looked at him then. People today, of course, when they think about George Michael, they think about this gay guy. Back then, nobody knew he was. I mean, maybe people thought maybe he might be, with the Dago colors and shit. But nobody, we Americans, we didn't believe people were gay.
right.
So, you know,
I don't think we still do believe that people are gay.
yeah, you're right.
What was really interesting is that this George Michael album, especially the video for Faith, stepping back for a moment, that
Hmm.
was the first time that my black girlfriend made a comment about a man's ass.
Right, because it was all in that video.
I
That's true.
never thought about what my ass may look like to her
Right.
until that
George
video
Michael.
happened.
Yeah.
And then I realized that was it. I just realized I was never going to get anything like that because when my ass was moving back and forth, the line from my drawers wasn't moving, right? It was kind of just going up my
And
ass, right?
these are
So,
not
so
images
just
I need to even. I don't even want them in my
okay,
head.
go back and watch the video. Okay,
Okay.
so we move into Father Figure, right? And Father Figure could have probably been a bigger song, in my opinion. It did go number one, but
Yeah,
it
it did.
went right. It went number one because of everything else, right? That happened from the album, and it's a song about him being in a cab, driving a cab at night, singing "I will be your father figure, put your tiny hand in mine." And by the way, all you hear are black women that are just surrounding that in the vocal, washed out reverbs of black women. I will be your father figure.
Right.
So
Right.
so all of the Catholicism was pushed to the side, right? Because
Hmm.
if it was just him singing or a whole bunch of white girls, then you would have just went back to the Catholic Church and I will be your father figure, put your tiny hand. That's creepy, right?
Right.
That's just creepy.
Right.
So now that we have it in the Baptist Church, and knowing that how the Baptist Church sometimes is a flaming pile of incestuous. Come sit on your uncle's lap on Memorial Day and show your uncle how wonderful. I'm sorry, I'm back into the porn. I'm back into the Pornhub thing.
Right.
Back into the Pornhub thing. Do you know what a pog is, by the way? Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going.
Actually, I do. But
Right,
we'll skip it.
exactly. So that was a father figure, and then now comes, interestingly enough, the money shot. I want your sex.
Yes.
I want your sex is a brilliant, provocative, much like Bobby Brown taught us what would teach us what prerogative means. When George Michael says explore mahogany, explore monogamy, right?
Right.
I got to run to the dictionary and figure out what the fuck is he talking about monogamy, because whatever, and it's kind of counterintuitive. I'm gonna explore monogamy, all right, and as long as, hey, if exploring monogamy gets me to fuck 20 and 30 bitches, then I'm gonna explore monogamy, right? So that's
That
exactly
was
what
such a
he
great
gave us.
song. At the time, it was so different than everything else that you had heard. It was
Exactly.
really, it was a brilliant, brilliant
It,
song.
it,
I
it,
will say
it,
that.
it
I know.
was it was everything that was good about hip hop, right? Again, going back to that Lynn drum, right?
Hmm.
Where you just got the sense that George Michael was just sitting, George Michael was sitting in his studio and he was like, oh yeah, right, and that's
Right.
it. There was nothing
Hmm.
else, and then he pushed a button, exported it, and then sent it to Sony or whatever. Um, that's the feeling that you got from I Want Your Sex, and it was the video, right? And even those of us that looked at him kind of weird because is he fucking Andrew Ridgeley? Is he not fucking Andrew Ridgeley? Even of us that looked at us weird, all of a sudden, when that girl comes out and that's his girlfriend and that's the way that the record label played
Right.
it and everything else like that, and that was just great. So I remember not seeing much of the video, but seeing the newscasters show him,
Right.
and he's and then so what ends up happening, like any good again, and George Michael, in his efforts to be artistic, he's a businessman, and what does he immediately do? He films the video. You can't play it on MTV, so he's going to sell it, right? So you can buy not the DVD version, but you can buy the cassette 15-minute cassette video remix that has this whole long. By the way, MTV decided to actually air it because he started out by saying he filmed a whole bunch of promos about safe sex because again we were
Right.
talking about the AIDS epidemic and it was something like hold on it was something really crazy. Let me see if I can do this.
Okay.
So it was, hi, I'm George Michael. You should always explore monogamy.
I remember those
Sex
ads.
is something that you should take seriously. I'm gay and I'm going after little boys in the park. But
You never
you should
said that.
explore. Right. Well, it's one of those things, right? It's like one of those crazy filters and stuff like that. And I'm
Right.
gonna learn how to
Right.
do that on Skype. So, one, that was cool because up until then, a guy that sounded just like Marvin Gaye, who was gay, and not Marvin Gaye being gay, but George Michael was gay and he sounded like Marvin Gaye. You understand what I'm saying? All of a sudden, he's got this really deep voice, and then it turns out you realize how much of an accent,
He
for some
really
reason
has,
Europeans want to sound. By the way, another side note, of all the great '80s artists, can you name which bands didn't try to sing an American accent? Of all the UK and the Australia's best artists, which bands did not sing in an American accent? Which bands kept their accents?
Jeez.
Depeche
I don't know.
Mode.
You're gonna.
Depeche Mode.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Depeche
true.
Mode was glorious, and just I'm going.
Depeche Mode
Right.
has like 2 great albums. Most artists don't have that, so I give them credit for that. They have at least 2 great albums.
So you're wrong, and you don't deserve to be right. Vince Clarke. Okay, fine. Pet Shop Boys is another one that
Right.
used their accent, but that's because they pretty much talked over beats, or what you whippersnappers would call hip hop, right? So I think there's a direct correlation between
One of the
Little
most
Xan
underrated bands of all
and
time.
Pet Shop Boys. There's a direct correlation between sometimes you're better off dead. There's a gun on your head. That.
Think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables at a restaurant.
Right, at a restaurant in a western town, right?
Right.
Having just spent
Love
the
it.
last week and a half in London,
Mhm.
one,
We should have did a podcast while you were there, by the way.
I apologize, but I was on the West End with
Gotcha.
West End
Right.
girls, right? You got to know London to just realize how ridiculous West End Girls really is. Okay, all right, let's keep going on. So you have "I Want Your Sex," right? And "I Want Your
Which
Sex."
a lot of radio stations, by the way, wouldn't play that song.
But what did that do? Fuck, I got to go out.
Oh,
and
just
get
made
this.
it better. Right.
I just got to go out and get this. Right, I got to go out and get this. So it blows it up, right? And what does George Michael do? He goes, "This shit is dope." And here's the thing: when you write a great song in the studio, you know it. And I'm telling you something, you double down and you are about your shit when you write a great song in the studio and then you call the band in to say, play this motherfucker live that I just programmed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's "I Want Your Sex" Part 2 and Part 3.
Right. Yeah.
And
he's
that
definitely
gets
feeling himself.
exactly. And unlike Bobby Brown, it isn't a reprise, right? It is actually, they switch it up and he's got different lyrics, so it's actually a different song. That's good. "I Want Your Sex," definitely essentials. And I won't say that "I Want Your Sex" is held up as good as the rest of the album, right? Because it's a little too synthetic now. And also I think that given what we know about George Michael, right, and his proclivity for marijuana and park sex,
Hmm.
it just doesn't sound, the whole idea of
Yeah, because our opinion of him
the whole
changed,
idea
so of course
of
the opinion of the songs changed.
exactly
Yeah,
right. And
that's
now, okay,
mhm,
so let's go to One More Try, right?
right.
So One More
It goes one.
Try suffers from the last song first side complex that we've talked about ad nauseum
Ah,
on this podcast, and it's just a song that doesn't hold up for the rest of the album. Other songs, Hands to Mouth, Look at Your Hands, that kind of thing, where you
mhm.
have George Michael just trying to sing. One More Try is really good in the sense that where Faith and I Want Your Sex and Father Figure took you, where he was just doing this gruntle stuff like that. One More Try, but remember this every other, that big band and that big sound that
Yeah.
I think George Michael was looking for. And unfortunately, I think George Michael had two routes to take after this album. He could continue just to write these hit songs, which I think he said he found, very, very formula driven, and he could do it at any time, or he can write these songs that meant something. You sell 10 million albums,
Yeah, you can do what
and
you
then you
want.
do tours. You can do what the fuck you want. You know what I mean?
Right.
Although apparently Sony told him that you can't quite do what the fuck you want, which was as you go on and listen without prejudice and all the rest of that stuff.
Hmm.
So One More Try is a great song in the way that in his performance of it, which I think is great. It's a very simple video, and I think it's one important thing to think about. One of the reasons why it's really cool to do an 80s podcast is because we can make direct correlations between the songs and the music videos, which you couldn't
Right.
do in the 70s, and in the nine you couldn't do in the 70s, and in the 90s. Since there was just so much New Jack Swing, videos were incredibly boring. And then when it went to EDM, all we got is freedom, pause, make a step and go for yours. That kind of thing, right?
Right.
That's just. You remember Freedom Williams, right, with no shirt on?
Of course. Everybody loved Freedom Williams.
you know,
Is he gonna make it to the Hall of Fame, you think?
um,
Doubt it. Yeah. Okay.
So the interesting thing about Freedom Williams is that he did a Johnny Gill and he copyrighted the name CNC Music Factory. So David Civilis, which is half of CNC, David Cole,
Hmm.
actually passed away in the mid '90s.
Right.
He was the other guy, right? David Civilis is just always complaining, and Freedom Williams goes around the world touring as Freedom Williams and CNC Music Factory, which they had maybe 3 songs, right? But he's somehow popping 90 minutes out of those 3 songs, right? Where
Must be a couple of reprises in there.
where he
Right.
just for like a good 5 minutes, right? Pause, take a step, and go for yours, right?
Uh, Back to George Michael.
That's just,
Are we on side 2 yet? I think we should be close.
you
I
know,
think we're on
it's
side
when
2.
you're singing to you sing it to the audience, and you're singing, and you know it's a note you can't hit, right? And the reason, nigga, I paid to hear you sing. Do you know what I'm saying?
You ain't hearing me say nothing, but yeah,
I,
right. Let the audience sing.
I paid to hear you sing, right? I'm not a woman, I'm not a man, I am something that you'll never understand, cause,
Right.
yeah, come on.
My worst example of that. Well, never mind. I'll save that. I'll save that for a '90s podcast. For this band I saw that did something like that really pissed me off.
Whew, if you
But it was a
can't
very
sing the
popular
note,
artist that did that, and it
if
really
you can't
bothered
sing the note, don't let the audience sing the note.
me. Right.
Right, that's,
Right.
classic Oasis. Okay, so let's move on to Hard Day. Now, I thought Hard Day was amazing, but Hard Day was amazing because it was, we didn't get a lot of these in the 80s. So when you got like a big record producer to come in and remix your record. Generally that was saved to push people to buy the 12-inch. I don't know
Right.
how much it was being played in clubs and everything else like that. Um, but what George Michael was doing on this album was so incredibly funky. You just wanted to remix it. You wanted to remix it. So
Mhm.
Hard Day, in and of itself, is a very, very plain song, and you can tell it was written at the same time as I Want Your Sex. Same type of Lynn drums, sitting in a room by yourself. It doesn't have all the big vocals of, let's say, a father figure. It's got him, doing his
Right.
classic, "Won't you give me a break, spot?" That
Give me
kind
a
of thing.
breakdown. Right.
Yeah, yeah. It,
Mhm.
it, it was, and that was just kind of an ad lib. But Shep Pettibone, he took it, and then he just. That's when he started doing the stuff with the sampling, and he started going up and down. Give me a break,
Yeah.
give me a break. He started doing all the
Right.
rest of that stuff, and that's what made that song, right? So,
That's true.
so "Hard Day" is a great song. In what I loved
It's
about,
definitely an '80s song.
yeah, it's definitely 80s song. But what I loved about it was, if you're around our age, by the time this album came out, you were either on your way to being an adult, or you were
Hmm.
already an adult in the first, in the
Hmm.
first year. So the first
Right.
year of maybe paying rent, and the first year of having to take care of yourself and not leaning on mom
Right.
and dad, and it was the weight of the world, right? It was the kind of thing. George Michael was really good for bringing me back to um, all the stuff that I couldn't stand about a relationship. Yeah, somebody told me
Mhm.
everything she wants is everything she sees, right? That's
You're right.
right. I'm a
Right.
17-year-old, and that didn't mean too much to me. But fuck, do I listen to that every single fucking day?
I was in high school with my first wife, who you know, Monica, and we had a big old argument about this song because I don't know, she had asked me for something, and I used that song as an example, and we had a big old argument about it. That oh
Not
you,
not not one of your not one of your brightest points right there. That's
right? Not
that's
really, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You know what? And that's because as we know, your first wife is not white, and
right.
that everything she wants is everything she sees. Is some shit you can only get away with singing to a white girl.
Exactly.
Right. What? Everything you want is everything. Nigga, I'll buy it myself. Right? I belong to a federal
Ah,
student credit union, nigga. I'll swipe my own
uh,
damn shit. Right?
ah.
Oh, that's gonna piss somebody off.
Yes, that will. Yeah.
That's gonna piss them. Okay,
Send your
so
letters to Frank.
that's right. I'm the Prince part of adult education. Come send me an email. So Hard Day was just that kind of song, right? Right, where you just like sitting there, So Don't Bring Me Down, which was
Right.
heavy. You know what I'm saying? Don't bring me down. And again, unlike I Want Your Sex, which is not a it's kind of a weird kind of title for a song, not something that you would use. You wouldn't just. It
Hey,
wasn't one of those things that you'd say to somebody, "I want
right.
your sex" or whatever. But "Don't Bring Me Down" is something that you would say to someone.
Hmm. Yeah.
Don't bring. Give me a break. Give me a break now. So, "Hard Day" is the gem on this album. And I think we have a couple of other gems on this album, but
Mm.
definitely "Hard Day" is the gem on this album. But only because the remix made you listen to it, and you got so used to the remix
Yeah. The
that when you
remix
went to the
was yeah.
album, it was
Right.
just refreshing. It was a cleanse of the Akai 950, I think, that they were using
Hmm.
on that song.
Yeah. Shep had a field day on that remix. He threw in everything, but the kitchen sink in that joint.
Right, right. Like, well, Shep is doing the Nile Rodgers. Oh, you want me to do something with this Reflex song? Hold my beer.
Right.
Right, right. Hold my beer. And that's exactly what you right. That just blew that shit up. You know what I'm saying? And that
Exactly.
was that. That's exactly that fun part of
Mm.
sampling vocals and doing that. Next up, we have Hand to Mouth and Look at Your Hands, and that's songs 6 and 7. And the interesting thing is that when you have an album that hits this hard, right, and even One More Try, coming off of the 2 I Want Your Sex, One More Try is kind of like ear cleansing, because you've just been hearing 808s, boom, 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 right? And then One More Try just clears it out. Hard Day brings you back. And then Hand to Mouth and Look at Your Hands, the redeeming factor of those songs is that you get them, they would be great Wham songs.
That's true.
They would be great Wham songs, but not for this album.
Is there any other artist who had 2 songs about hands back to back in the title? I'm like, I just found that very strange.
Right. Hey Prince, George Michael was the
Was he
first,
running out of ideas at this point?
was the
I'm
first
just saying.
George Michael was the first artist since Simon and Garfunkel to have the #1 record of the year and the #1 album of the year. Right? A feat that the gloved one, the King of Pop, did not get.
That's true.
And that's the interesting thing, because that's what he was setting out to do. He was setting out to break the records that Michael Jackson didn't break.
Those 2 songs, though, I think sounded very black. Hand to
Yeah.
Mouth and
Yeah.
Look at Your Hands. Those are very, those are soul records, basically.
The problem is that in 1987, when this came out, soul had certainly moved on to New Jack.
Right.
It had certainly moved on to Guy, and it had certainly moved on to those types of things. So George Michael making a soul record just kind of was like cringy, right? That's why I'm saying that this was these were 2 songs that probably should have been 1985,
right?
1985, and I think again it goes back to that George Michael wanting to create something that had substance, which was fine, but it had horns and it had a band. Right, and it was interesting though. But if you listen to the lyrics, like especially "Look at Your Hands," you got 2 black children and a broken man. Bet you don't, bet you don't, bet you don't like your life now. Right, and it's kind of so from a topic perspective, it works with the album. Right, and by the way, this Faith was one of those albums that, generally we don't, and we still don't in society. One of the things I want to encourage all of our listeners to do is go on the Reddit and go to a subreddit called Pussy Pass. Okay, for all you feminists in the audience, this is a good time to just take a break for a moment, because we're probably going to get into something that is, something that, frankly, you would prefer not to hear. And I'll give you a second to pause the right. Go ahead. I'll give you a second to pause.
I have no idea what you're talking about, by the way, but go ahead.
Okay, so this album is one of the first albums that, written from a man's perspective about a man going through bullshit without trying to blame himself or what he could do better. The whole album is unbiasedly masculine, and just singing that women, you're fucked up. And this is a formula that for me as an artist, this is a formula that I've been trying to perfect, because if you write this the wrong way, then you come off like some misogynistic, horrible person. But every once in a while, you get this type of stuff. And I think like Brandon Urie and Panic at the Disco has figured out how to write great albums that way. I think Maroon 5 and Adam Levine have written great albums from the perspective.
Drake?
Yeah. Well,
I think Drake has managed to do the same thing too.
No. See, what I'm saying is that Drake did the opposite, right? Drake always has a song on there that says, "Yeah, I wouldn't date me either," because I always be up in the club, right? I always got my dick someplace that it don't
Okay.
belong.
All right.
Right,
Okay.
right. So,
Yeah, you're right.
but
Okay.
okay. So George Michael, that's what he brings to this album. And again, this is a first because not even Michael Jackson is doing that. This is a first where he is not apologizing, right? He is not apologizing for just being a man. All right, feminists, you
But
can come
doesn't it
back.
make it kind of ridiculous seeing that he was gay? Of
No,
course, we didn't know this at the time, but
yeah,
doesn't that
but
just make the whole thing when you look at it like,
yeah, but
like just
yeah,
make
but
him more contrived?
all
Is
right,
that what?
all right. So I'm gonna ask you. Hold on, feminists, you need to leave again. No, no, no,
Right,
no,
sorry.
no, no,
Call
no,
me
no.
back
I'm
too
going
early.
to ask you. I'm gonna ask you. George Michael, top or bottom?
He's definitely on the bottom. He is not on the top.
I
Give me a break.
disagree with that. I
Really?
absolutely disagree with that.
Oh,
Absolutely
come on.
disagree with that. He just and when you look at the nature of his relationships as people talk, right now, I'm not one to just buy into social media or buy into
Oh, I
everything I
do.
read on
I'm
the
a
internet.
bandwagon jumper, but go
Right.
ahead.
Well, seeing as I never knew him, I'm gonna have to use all of this stuff. So he was unabashedly a top. Elton John, top or bottom?
I don't know. I assume all gay people are bottoms because that's just the way
But then who's on
because I
top?
think like a guy.
Right. Well, see, but gay guys think like a guy too.
Okay, yeah. I guess, all right. I
Right.
haven't really given that much thought, but all right,
Uh,
okay.
but you
So
have
you
to.
think
Remember,
I watched this documentary on George Michael, and when he talked about when he met his some lover at the end of the some guy that he fell in love with, and it was the happiest time of his life and all this stuff, and they showed that guy.
hold on, Alejandro.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
Alejandro. Yeah, right, Alejandro. And you think
No.
Alejandro?
Friends, say it like you respect the culture. Alejandro. Yeah.
My first wife was Colombian. I respect the culture. I respect
Okay. Fair enough.
Alejandro. Yeah, I just can't roll my R's.
Yeah,
That's
well, it's one of those things. It's an art. It's not like everybody can do it.
But that guy didn't look like. I mean, that guy looked like a top to me. You think he was a bottom?
You got to be careful what people look like, man. You just can't say that kind of shit. It's 2019. We don't know who looks like a top and what looks like a bottom. How
Yeah,
are you defining that?
I guess you're right.
Because listen, you can
George
go
Michael
to
just seems so feminine to me.
yeah, but you can go to Atlanta and you can get it too. A lot of them Atlanta dudes will fuck you and you will be a bottom.
So they say. I don't.
So this conversation is starting to get really uncomfortable for a second here. But this part of the conversation not brought to you by Corona. Please next
Right.
time turn this shit around, right? We don't.
Sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
so my only point is to say that this album was decidedly masculine, right? And I think that
Right. It
is
was.
something. I think that's something that to keep in mind. Let's move on to
But
Monkey.
he purposely made this album very masculine, I think, to deflect who he actually was.
Whoa! Are you saying that gay people can't be masculine?
No, I'm not saying that at
So
all.
why is he deflecting from who he is?
But because okay, let's move on because
Wow.
you're not getting me canceled. Okay.
I'm trying, brother. I'm trying.
I know
Like
you're
I said,
trying.
fuck. What I learned from George Michael is that it's better if you have your own shit.
Exactly. You ain't flying solo yet, dude.
Keep talking about that shit. All right, let's talk about Monkey, right? Monkey was a
I love
great
this
song.
by the way. This to me is my favorite song on this whole album. I just love this record. I just think this is such a great song.
Monkey is a great way to come almost to the end of the album, right? The lyrics are great. Why can't you do it? Why can't you set your monkey free? I think it's really interesting because the only time that I had ever heard the expression "monkey on your back" is when I was in the projects and they were talking about some people in my family who for anonymity's sake I'm not going to mention who, but they had a problem with junk, right? And it was always they had the monkey on their back, which was really interesting, right? That to while George Michael never says what that monkey is, right? You get that idea
Exactly.
that the monkey is the sexual proclivity of some woman. You know what I mean? And
Right. Right.
he's just got the he's got this idea that, and by the way, I will tell you, during this time frame, I was dating a woman, and she, sometimes she would come home late, and she would come home late because, you know what, we were 19, 20, and
Right.
we were 19 at the time, and shouldn't have been living together and shouldn't have been doing all the rest of that stuff. But hell, I was in college and my nose was
Mhm.
open. So when she would get home late because she wanted to go out and hang out with her friends, it's like, why can't you do it? Why can't you set your monkey free?
Right.
That whole thing where the monkey was, getting rid of the old you, getting rid of all of that old stuff that was a part of you, and childish ways and everything else like that. My
Yeah,
biggest
the song
problem.
was very
Yeah,
clever because it
yeah,
didn't
absolutely.
because it said a lot without really saying anything. It
Exactly.
could mean anything. That's what made the
Exactly.
song so it was very cleverly done.
I
I dig
think
it.
that also, by this time, from a single perspective, George Michael, it was just obvious that it was going to be his year.
Yeah.
So, where Shep Pettibone was kind of in the mix before the album was released and everything, this is what Jam and Lewis came around. And so Jam and Lewis
Right.
did the remix
Yeah, a
to
little New
Monkey,
Jack
right?
deal.
Which was horrible. And it was one of those things that Jam and Lewis kind
Got
of
the
like the
check.
Mo Money soundtrack. One of those things that you just like, ooh, Jam, Lewis, stop once, please. Pull
Do
back.
you need to get all the money? you know.
Can you leave some out there for somebody else?
Right.
Whoo,
Right.
whoo.
You're not
You
even
know,
trying hard.
right.
You know.
That's the right. So where in the world do you want Luther Vandross, Belle Biv DeVoe, and Janet Jackson? Right. Where in the world do you come up with? And let's get Janet Jackson because we know her. And let's get Belle Biv
Right.
DeVoe because they're trying to do something after Poison. And fuck it, for street cred, let's get Luther Vandross.
Let's get all our friends a check.
Let's
Gotta get
right,
them.
let's get right, let's get right, and let's have Karen White do the backup because apparently
Right.
that's probably what happened to most of her career. Okay, so you've got Monkey, which was massive hit,
Uh,
and it was one of those things where worst type of video, right?
yeah,
And
that video
and
sucked.
and so obviously George Michael was really tired of the whole fame thing, right? Be careful what you wish for, and so this as a single closes out the album, and the album is always going to come to a close, whether it be "Slippery When Wet" from Bon Jovi,
Hmm.
when they do the one music video that is them performing live, and it's just
Right.
cuts,
Yeah.
superimposed cuts,
Exactly.
right? It's just like you can't,
We're getting
you can
lazy.
see George Michael just sitting there, oh, just bloody mate, can't you just use the fucking video from the O2? Well, the O2 was that from Wembley, right? Can't you just use the fucking video from that? I just don't want to do it anymore, right?
Right.
And that's exactly the kind of stuff that was happening. But Monkey would have been as big a song as I Want Your Sex with the right video and the right push. But it just was late. Now, it's a great song to have. It's a great song to have late in the album. One of the things that I will tell you is if you are a recording artist, right? If you are an artist that works in a recording studio by yourself, and you want to really understand the importance of getting it right, I strongly recommend that you YouTube or you go to iTunes or Spotify or Tidal. You think Tidal would
Yeah.
ever pick us up as a podcast?
I have title, by the way, dude. Okay. Let's not talk bad about title. I support artists. I support black artists. Continue.
Okay. All right, Jay-Z supporter. If you get the opportunity to listen to the a cappella, right, of Monkey, so that's the version with no music and just his vocals, and
Right.
you can hear all of the effects that he puts in and all of the work that he does and all the overdubs. It's absolutely, it is a 101 it's a one-on-one in how to record a proper pop song by yourself doing all the background vocals, and it's highly recommended. We finally end the vinyl album out with "Kissing a Fool," right?
Worst song of all on the album.
I think you have to end the album this way. I think you have to. I think you're
Yeah, you got
tired
to
by
bring
the end of
everything down.
Monkey.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're tired of Monkey, and I think that when you think about "Kissing a Fool" and you go back to everything that you've listened to, right? It's the
Mhm.
first song and only song on the album where he suggests that maybe he sees the world wrong, and I
Right.
think that
That's true.
that's the twist.
Yeah, as an
you know?
album for the entire album, it fits. Yeah, I just
Right.
didn't like the song, but yeah, it fits. I can see why
Right.
why he made it last.
It,
You're
it
right about that.
it wouldn't have been a Wham song, so it was definitely a song on this album.
Mm-hmm.
I could have done without Hand to Mouth and Look at Your Hands. Definitely could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But Kissing a Fool is kind of the unpretentiousness of One More Try, right? Kissing a Fool is the um, My Way of the album, where he's sitting on a stool and he's smoking a cigarette and singing just raspy, and it's supposed to be very jazz bandy, and that's what it was, and that worked.
I think that's my problem with it, because it seems to me white artists, when they want to be come across as serious, that's when they decide that they're going to basically get into somebody else's music.
Right.
And
That's fair.
let me do some jazz.
That is fair.
Let me do something completely, out of my scope to show how serious I am.
That
really
is
kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
you're
That's why I hated it.
that is absolutely fair with that. There's no argument that I can make there. Again, the problem is that you end on vinyl on this, but then if you have the cassette and CD, then you get to the
Reprise.
remix. Right, you get to the remix of Hard Day, which is kind of where you want it to be, which is great. And so we've talked ad nauseum about Hard Day.
Isn't there another version of "I Want Your Sex" on there?
It is. It's called "The Last Request," and
Okay.
and it's a great just saxophone, right? And the saxophone and the bass, and it's the same Lindrum beat, right? That he takes, and then he just, it's almost as if he's sitting here and he's like, it's almost as if he's sitting here and he's like, well, this song was so fucking dope that I'm just gonna sit back and just write a whole nother song,
Yeah. I
so
love this beat so
I
much.
and that works,
Yeah.
so that's Faith, and my takeaway is it was the album that killed George Michael because he wanted to escape it, but he never wanted to deny it. He never wanted to get away with. He never wanted to get away with. He never wanted to move away from being the guy that bought Faith, that bought you Faith, and I think that was important. I think it's also important because you have to understand that the album was released in October, and in the summer you had Michael Jackson's Bad everywhere. And so it was really, really just a concerted effort from George Michael and Columbia Sony at the time that he's going to top Michael Jackson because he had fell behind with Everything She Wants and Careless Whisper and all of that stuff. He had actually lost Grammys and lost awards. He got the American Music Awards R&B. And so he won that, and then everybody booed him because they thought that he was taking, black music, and it's just really
Right.
weird. So, the fact that he could come out and he could do that, I thought was really amazing. This was again the album that killed him, but I think it's not just essential listening for the artist. I think that you start with Faith, and then you go back to Wham, but you can go forward to some of the newer stuff that he did.
I don't think if you're gonna know about George Michael, I don't think you need to listen to anything else. But up to Faith, you can stop right then and there. That's it. Because he basically blew his wad. Every great song is in that album.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
every
Exactly.
great moment about George Michael was then. His whole career, everything about him went downhill from that point. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, sometimes artists, he said everything he had to say. He was done. And
Fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So, what do we give?
So that means it's essential.
George Michael, Faith. Thumbs up. Thumbs down.
Oh, thumbs up,
Thumbs
definitely.
up. Absolutely.
Definitely
Thumbs
thumbs
up
up.
is something people
Right.
should listen to. All
Yeah.
right.
Right.
So that's been the Adult Education Podcast, talking about Faith by George Michael, 1987, October of 1987. To this point, 10 times platinum. Amazing album, amazing article, amazing artist. Will be missed. One of my favorite artists, George
Yeah.
Michael. Prince. Any final words?
No. No. And send all your letters and complaints. You want to give them your Twitter account so they can go ahead on and tweet you
Do a
and
search
get that
for
out the way?
do a search for Chartreuse. That's my nickname, and just Chartreuse blog, and it's it's spelled and you know how to do the Char sign because of Charlemagne the God, so you know the first couple of letters, right? That's it.
Okay.
Leave comments in below, right? I love when people do that, right? Leave comments below. Go to the next video here, right? I love when they do that. That's you have to be where you have to have the wherewithal. So Prince, see you.
All right, man. Later.
All right,
Peace.
there we go. Let's get a 60-second one. 60-second one in the bag. All right.
Okay.
Hey Prince.
Yo, what's up?
60 seconds, one hit wonders of the 80s. Smoking like a bandit, stealing time. Underneath the sycamore tree.
I used to love that guy, by the way.
You were the only one.
Terrence Trent D'Arby, right?
You loved him because you weren't getting enough Prince at the time. That was the problem.
Yeah, that could be. That could be.
That was the problem.
He eventually ended up changing his name to something crazy that I can't remember. Nobody could remember.
I thought he morphed into Lenny Kravitz, but okay. He changed his mind. I was going to say, didn't he marry Lisa? Okay, Terrence Trent D'Arby and the Heartline, according to Terrence Trent D'Arby, absolutely.
The Hardline, according to Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Absolutely ostentatious. A couple of good songs. The guy never put out any other. He put out other albums, but nothing meaningful. And Wishing Well was just, Wishing Well was an example of the record companies telling you that you were gonna like this guy. And
that was a good dude. No, you're completely wrong. That album was good. I think that album should be listened to, but as a single, that song, it was a great song. It was. I think. What year was that?
That was 1980s, 1988.
1988. Oh, that was that's all right. Yeah. Oh, well then definitely. Yeah, that was great. That was it fit the times. It fit the times. Terrence Trent D'Arby. I mean, he was an egomaniac and was nowhere near as good as he thought he was. But
agreed.
But that was a good song.
Well, he was nowhere close to where the record company thought he was.
I mean, you comparing him to Lenny Kravitz, that's just because of the hair. That's just because
it's a light-skinned black dude.
Yeah, right. Light-skinned black dude.
It's a light-skinned black dude with big cheekbones.
Right. Yeah, you and your colorism.
That's yes.
Treat him like the separate artist that he was, and he did kind of have a Prince sound.
As soon as we remember his, as soon as we remember his name that he's got now, and
right.
It's he did one of those Mos Def things, and got a stolen passport to South
Right.
Africa. Okay, listen. This has been 60 seconds. Terrence Trent
Yeah, we
D'Arby
spent more than enough
with
time on him.
60 seconds. Trent D'Arby, thumbs up or thumbs down.
Thumbs up, dude.
Oh,
Oh, come on, man.
oh, jeez. All right,
I love that
Prince.
album.
Have a good one. All right,
Yeah, you too, dude.
let's do one more.
Okay.
All right. Hey, this is Frank, and this is Prince, Adult Education Podcast. 60 seconds, one hit, 80s wonder. What was really interesting, right, was that black dude from the UK that sung with the two white dudes that had the high-pitched voice.
Dude,
She drives me crazy.
okay,
And
let me
I
tell
can't-
you a story concerning
Fine
this
Young
song.
Cannibals. She drives me crazy.
I will make this story quick.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So I was I stole my dad's American Express card. Okay. rented rented a convertible, picked up my friend Hank and my brother, and we drove to Florida in that car to see who was going to end up being my future wife, Monica, at the time. That song came out, so we stopped at the record store with my dad's credit card to buy a whole bunch of different albums to listen to on the trip. My brother insisted that we listen to that song over and over again for the trip. She drives me crazy. I must have heard that song 101 times driving from New Orleans to Florida for that song. So that song has a special place in Campbell history for that reason. So
Maybe it's because
thumbs up on that song. It's a hit. I know every word.
Maybe it's because Travis has a pretty deep voice, and I remember when he used to sing up like this, right? I think I think it was a horrible song. I think it was gimmicky, and I think it was, what is it? Reconstituted beat? Was it the English beat?
See, I thought it was one of the Fine Young Cannibals. Who was
No, it was the Fine Young Cannibals, but that was reconstituted like English beat or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's why everybody really enjoyed it with that guy with the voice and and you know what?
Did they ever have another hit?
Snuck a hit. Yeah, no, I think they had one more hit, but off that same album, and they snuck a hit. I mean, I thought it was a sneak hit. It was a sneak hit like one headlight. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, it's Bob Dylan's son. We can drive it home. Okay, that's what Fine Young Cannibals were. Fine Young Cannibals, thumbs up, thumbs down. She drives me crazy.
Thumbs
down.
Up,
Sorry.
thumbs up. Yeah,
sorry,
thumbs
Travis.
up for the song.
Sorry, Travis. I know you have to remember. By the way, what did your dad do to you?
I had to pay for all that shit, man.
Yeah. So
and it comes up in conversation every time my daughter does something and I complain to my dad about it. He's like, "Yeah, but at least you didn't, take your credit card and run the country."
Right. Your dad says, "At least you didn't take your credit card and buy 50 copies of She Drives Me Crazy by the Young Cannibals." Right. So Mr. Prince Campbell II, your father, Mr. Campbell is agreeing with me and thumbs down. Fine Young Cannibals.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Fine Young Cannibals. She Drives Me Crazy. All right, Prince. We'll see you next time.
All right, later, dude.
All right, man. Got 2 in the bucket.
Okay, dope. That's good.